welcome to Little Learners. In today's video, I wanted to share with you my top 10 funniest moments from teaching in reception. Now, there have been a lot more than 10 and probably some that I can't even think of right now, but I wanted to share these with you because they make me laugh every time I think of them, so maybe they will make you laugh too. If you have any funny stories from teaching or just from being with your own children, make sure you leave them in the comments below. Just so you know, I am changing all names of children that I mention in this video to protect their identities. These are in no particular order because every time I think of all of these, I can never decide which one is my favourite. So without further ado, here we go. So number 1. This is possibly something that other teachers have heard in the past too, but I thought was more of a cliche thing for children to say, but it just cracked me up. So at some point in the year, at a half term or something like that, a parent brought me a thank you present and they gave me a bottle of wine. And I took it out of the bag and I said, "Oh, thank you very much." And in front of a load of other parents, one of the children stood up from the carpet and announced to everyone, "Oh, Miss Taylor, my mummy drinks that special medicine too, every day." And the other parents just stood there like, "Oh, sure, okay." She couldn't quite understand why people were trying to suppress their laughter so much. And I did tell her mum afterwards, she had a good old laugh about it, but I think she was a little bit embarrassed, but that's fine. So that was definitely a really funny way to kind of end my day that week. Number 2, I had a child in my class who had a lot of different learning needs, and throughout the year I was forever learning new things about him, and I mean so were his parents, so was everyone, because there were a lot of different layers to his different needs and his different abilities. And one day I was lining up my class ready for lunchtime, and there was a bit of a delay in the lunch hall, so I had all my children lined up and I decided that I would sing some songs with them while we waited. And I asked the children what songs they wanted to sing, and one of them suggested Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Classic. So we started singing this song, and the boy I was just talking about, let's call him Joe, just kind of looked up at me with this lovely look on his face of just pure calm, and as the song went on, he just slowly started slumping to the floor and eventually just lied down on the floor to go to sleep. I don't know if his mum maybe sang this song to him at night to help him fall asleep, but every time we sang Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, he would just slowly start to fall asleep, to the point where one time I really wanted to demonstrate this to another teacher because I don't know if they quite believed me, and I started singing it to him and he ran away because he knew what kind of effect this song had on him. It was brilliant. Number 3. So I had these 2 girls in my class in my first year. Let's call them Julie and Susan. So Julie and Susan were like the Ant and Dec of my class. They were hilarious. They were always together. They were like this, best friends, but they were very different. So one of them was very girly. She really liked dressing up games, and the other one was a bit more of a tomboy, I suppose. I think that's what her parents kind of described her as. She liked a bit more rough and tumble, but for some reason these 2 girls worked so perfectly together and it was really lovely. I absolutely adored them, and they would always get up to little antics every now and again. Towards the end of the year, they decided that they really wanted to visit the staff room. Now, I suppose the staff room is kind of like this mythical place that children never really get to see but always hear about. The teachers are always going to the staff room. They're always having their lunch in the staff room and children aren't allowed in there. So they decided that they really wanted to go into the staff room, and I told them that if they were really good for the rest of the year, then maybe at the end of the year I would take them into the staff room, and they couldn't believe it. They were so excited, which I suppose I was kind of thinking that I was building this thing up that was actually really boring. It was a tiny room. It had hardly any space in it. It had a fridge. It had a toaster that never worked, a microwave that had seen better days, and a kind of a mishmash of chairs. So it wasn't very glamorous. So at the end of the year, I told them that I would take them into the staff room. So I took them in, and honestly, the room was so small, we just kind of walked in and then walked out again because you couldn't really walk around the staff room, it was so small. And they were really polite, trying to act as though they were so grateful that I had taken them there. But you could just see the look on their face of sheer disappointment at this magical place that actually was so boring. They never asked to go back, funnily enough. Number 4. I had this child in my class who was absolutely bonkers. He was so funny. He had a lot of different learning needs, but his humour and stand-up was definitely not one of them. He was so funny and very sneaky as well with his jokes. So every time I would ask him to do something, he would pretend that he didn't understand what I was saying, because that was his way of making a joke. And I remember this one time I was sitting down with a group of children and the coloured pencils were on the other side of the table, and instead of getting up and going to get the ones that children needed, I would ask this child, let's call him Bob, to pass me the coloured pencils, because it was important for him. He also had English as an additional language, so it was important for him to develop his English. So I would say, can you pass me the pink pencil? And then I'd know if he knew the word pink. He definitely knew all of the colours, but he would pick up, so I'd say, can you pass me a pink pencil? And he'd pick an orange one up and go, pink? And I'd say, no, Bob. I need a pink one. That one is orange. And he'd go, okay, pick up another one. And it'd be blue. And he'd say, pink. And it was just so funny. It was really lovely, actually, to see that he not only knew all of these words in English and what they meant, but he could actually play with them as well. It did get to the point where I just had to say, look, you know which one is the pink one, please just pass it to me, because it went on for quite a long time. But he used to do things like that all the time, and it sounds like it could get a little bit repetitive or a little bit annoying, but it always brought a smile to my face. Number 5. So this is another story about Bob, who just always used to make me laugh. We were sitting on the carpet at the end of the day. Most of the children had gone home, but his parents hadn't got there yet. They were running a little bit late. Bob was very, I don't want to say obsessed, but very attached to one of the other children in the class. Let's call her Jasmine. And he used to talk to her all the time. She used to kind of look after him. It was a really beautiful relationship. If not a little bit annoying for her. He did kind of pester her a lot, but it really was lovely. And we were just sitting on the carpet, just quietly waiting for his parents to come, and he just sat there looking into space and said, I wonder what Jasmine's doing. Bearing in mind she had just left about 2 minutes ago because her parents had just picked her up. I wonder what Jasmine's doing. And I said, oh, I don't know, Bob. I mean, she's probably walking home. But he wasn't really listening. He just said, watching TV, having a snack, getting into bed to have a nap. I kind of looked at him like, probably not. She's probably just walking. She just left. And he just continued to stare into space and said, I miss Jasmine. And it was just so pure but so funny. It was really lovely. And yeah, I mean, I said to him, maybe she was doing all of those things, but probably just still walking home. Number 6. In my classroom, well, just outside of my classroom, we had a bit of an outdoor area that children could just go to whenever they wanted during the day because I could still see them. And we had these awnings installed, so like a retractable roof, so that if it was raining they could still go out there, if it was too sunny they could still go out there and be shaded. And it was quite high up. And one day the children came in, running in, Miss Taylor, someone threw a toy on the roof. I was thinking, okay, they must mean like on top of the climbing frame or something, because that's probably a little bit low. It's lower and that's probably a bit more achievable. So I went outside, my teacher face on, very disappointed that someone had thrown a toy onto the roof of the climbing frame because that's not looking after our property and that was one of our golden rules. I walked outside and there was nothing on the kind of roof of the climbing frame. Oh no, I turned around and saw that there was a toy right as far as you could possibly throw it onto the top of the awning. So I needed to be very disappointed still that we were not looking after our property. But instead, I had to just say, just 1 minute, Miss Taylor's just got to go and do something. Turned around, walked back inside of the classroom and quietly just collected my emotions because I was so impressed that they'd managed to get this toy up there that I couldn't keep my disappointed teacher face on. I just kind of wanted to say, wow, like, have you thought about the Olympics? But, you know, I did go out there and deliver my whole kind of teacher speech. But I was just so impressed. It took forever to get the thing down. And no one really wanted to admit who it was. And I really wanted them to because I secretly wanted to congratulate them. Number 7. There are always good stories that come out of a reception class trip. On one occasion, we went to a place that had a little farm in it, and it was great. It had loads and loads of different animals for the children to see. I was having a great time, and it was really enclosed, so the children could kind of run off and look at different animals, and we didn't have to worry about them escaping. The children, not the animals, although the animals couldn't escape either. And at one point, there was this beautiful peacock that just kind of walked across and in front of a load of children and opened up all of its feathers, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And all the children were saying, wow, Miss Taylor, look at that, look at all the colours, and it was really bright and vibrant. It was a beautiful teaching moment, actually. One of the children who was looking at the peacock, let's call her Annie, said to my colleague, Miss, look at that leaf! And my colleague and I kind of turned to each other and thought, okay, maybe she's not looking at the peacock, or maybe she's just a bit confused. So my colleague said, no, darling, Annie, that's a peacock. Can you see it? It's got all these bright feathers and it's a bird. And can you know, she was kind of explaining it all to her. Lovely teaching moment. And Annie just kind of looked at the peacock, turned back to my colleague and said, well, it looks like a leaf, and walked off. And we were just stunned because all of the children were so engrossed in this peacock. And Annie, she was having none of it. That was a leaf. And that was that. Number 8. I had a child in my class once, let's call him Billy, and Billy had something called echolalia, which involves repeating a lot of what you hear. He was very good at contextualising his echolalia, so if he was repeating something about trains, he would put that into a conversation that people were already having about trains, so it would seem like he was engaging in the conversation, but actually he was just repeating things that he'd heard in the past. He used to say a lot of things that were very interesting actually, and he loved to listen to Blue Planet. His mum one day came to me just before school started and said, Miss Taylor, can I just have a quick word? And I said, sure, what's going on today? And she said, well, you know how Billy likes to listen to Blue Planet tapes a lot? And I said, oh yes, I've learned all about sharks this week. He just keeps repeating things that he's heard about sharks. It's really interesting. And she said, well, actually recently he's been listening to a lot of tapes about whales. And I said, oh, okay, maybe I'm going to learn a lot about whales now then. And she said, well, he's been listening to one about sperm whales and he just keeps coming out with the word sperm a lot. So I just wanted to let you know that that's where it's come from in case you heard it and thought that I was showing him inappropriate videos at home. Funnily enough, he never actually mentioned that word, so his mum never had to tell me, but it was a brilliant way to start my day. Number 9. I had a child in my class who liked to cause a little bit of trouble every now and again. Let's call her Jane. One day after lunchtime, Jane came to get me from the staff room and said, Miss Taylor, I have to tell you something. You have to come and see it. It's so terrible. And took me into the classroom as all the other children were lining up outside to come in after they'd had their playtime after lunch. And Jane showed me a load of glue all over the floor and said, Miss Taylor, someone came in at lunchtime and put all this glue on the floor. Can you believe it? It's awful. We have to find out who did this. I thought, okay, it's kind of strange how Jane knows about the glue. seeing as all the children should be outside, but I'll go with it. So all the children came in, sat down, and I said, okay everyone, I need to ask you a question. And Jane stood next to me, hands on hips, stern look on face. And I said, someone came in during playtime and put so much glue on the floor in the classroom, and I am so disappointed because this is not how we look after our property. I would like someone to own up to doing this. And the entire class in unison turned to Jane and said, it was Jane. And I turned to look at Jane, and the look on her face was, this is not going the way I planned. It was so funny, and I had to really stop myself from laughing because I had to be serious. But those are the hardest times to say serious, when you know you need to be as the teacher, but you just want to laugh at how silly some children can be. Number 10, my very last one. Every Friday, we would have someone take home our class pet, which would be some kind of teddy bear. So I believe that year we had Kenny the koala. Now I don't have Kenny the koala with me, but I do have Thumper, who's going to be our prop for this. Every Friday, someone would get to take home Kenny the koala, and lots of children had to wait a really long time for this opportunity, and we used to just pull a name out of a box so that it would be as fair as possible. Now, there was a gorgeous child in my class who every week, when his name wasn't read out, was devastated. Sometimes he would just fall to the floor and not want to get up. Much later on in the year, his name was finally pulled out of the box, and I was so relieved because I never really rigged it, because I wanted it to be as fair as possible, and that was the easiest way as well. This child, his name was called, and he was so excited. He needed to come up to the front of the classroom, collect the class pet, and then walk back to his carpet space, sit down with all of his stuff. But instead, he was so excited, he just picked everything up. And this, and this, and then carried it all the way to the front of the classroom through all of these children, hitting them all on the head with all of his stuff, collected the class pet, and then clambered all the way back to his carpet space. It was so unnecessary, but so funny. So that's a wrap on my top 10 funniest moments from reception. There are probably more, and if I think of lots more, then maybe I'll do a follow-up to this video. Please give this video a like if you found these stories funny. It really helps out my channel to see all those thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you're already subscribed, you can click on the bell icon. So every time I post a video, you get a notification and you never miss a thing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.